Well, preventing gun violence is really a hot topic right now all over the country. We often turn to lawmakers for answers, but the fact is there are a lot of things we can all do right now, today, to protect ourselves and our kids from guns.
Dr. Wendy Sue Swanson is here with some valuable reminders, especially if you do have a gun in your home, right?
Yeah, well, no question that we are focused on figuring out how to make this better. We're also seeing the remarkable voices and solutions that come from kids themselves. So this is a segment really for children, teens, parents, grandparents, and anyone who lives with a child. Now, new data out in the last week or so looked at homes of children who are at risk for depression or mental health challenges against homes that were not. And they looked at how people stored firearms in the house. Now, the reason being 1,000 children between the age of basically 10 and 19 die every year in this country from firearm-related suicide. Now, these are Washington state gun statistics that are up on the screen. So in our state, 718 deaths in 2015, 40% of Washington families have firearms, and we know 1 in 6 have guns that are stored, loaded, and unlocked. Now, that number is even a little bit less, but look at 35% of those have children at home. So a third of those households have guns that are loaded and unlocked. And we know when we looked at this data from last year across the United States, 2/3 of these families had loaded and unlocked guns that had even children who were at risk for things like depression or history of depression in their house or at risk for having a suicide. 1,000 kids every year, not the numbers that we've been talking about in the school setting, but in home setting, and kids who have access to firearms die from firearm-related suicide. So one of the things that we can do right now is think about who are these kids that are at risk, with a family history of depression, who have shown signs of depression, or who a family member has concerns about their mental health. Go and seek care right away. You know, a study published today actually found half of children who have depression aren't diagnosed until the time they're an adult. That means we're missing out on identifying these kids who are really at high risk for a firearm-related suicide. We know if you attempt or try to end your life when you're depressed or suicidal with a firearm, you're about 90% of the time likely to be successful.
Yeah.
So it's thinking about where these kids live.
And in the state of Washington, I think the number is 7 or 8 out of 10 gun deaths are suicides.
That's right. So the far majority, right, of how people end their lives at the end of firearms is not the settings in which we're waiting for legislation and waiting for control. Those are important conversations when we think about public health. But when I think about it, you look at the mass of the numbers, we have a lot of control ourselves. If you've got someone in your home who's got mental illness, who is depressed, who has shown suicidality or signs of less joy, less sadness, not engaged in their life, you're concerned about their levels of sadness. It's not just even storing guns safely, it's getting them out of that home and getting them out of a home where a child or a teen in particular might visit. We know that when you have access to a firearm, even in King County data, 9 times more likely to have a suicide end their life.
Right. You might think that you have your gun locked up safely. You might think your teen doesn't know the code to the safe or doesn't know where the key is,
That's
but
right. Well, data really shows most kids, even school-age kids, 5th graders, 6th graders, know the codes to these gun locks and know where these guns are stored. So safety recommendations for anyone right now: a lockbox, of course, always with a gun safe. Making sure that the ammunition is stored separately from where that gun is. So unloaded guns in the home and separate if you've got firearms in the home. And then just key to this segment, one of the things you can do right now is get firearms out of homes if you know a teen or anyone in your life is depressed, suicidal, or abusing drugs and alcohol that could change the way that they interact with that firearm. Get them out of that home now. This is one of the huge ways that we're going to decrease firearm tragedy.